Hi guys, welcome to our webinar for Trident Properties. My name is Gary Sparks. I have the very fancy title of being the National Sales Director for, as I said, Trident Properties. And at Trident Properties, we really help people build their wealth and actually make a difference in their lives. Now, today we're going to go for about, I think 45, 50 minutes, and I'm going to give you the information that you require to actually understand how to invest successfully. A couple of things that this seminar or this webinar is not about. Number one, we're not going to sell you anything. There's nothing to buy here. I'm not selling boot camps. I'm not selling $15,000 educational packages. I'm not doing any of that. I'm happy to sit here and give you all my time, and my team are happy to give you their time at no cost. So I want to make that very clear. There's nothing to buy and there's no cost involved in using our services. Secondly, today's going to be big picture, and it's going to be big picture of what it takes to be successful in building wealth in property. Now, for me, there's a big difference between being a property investor and actually building wealth in property. I'm going to cover that as we go through. And finally, this is about something that you can do at your time. There is no stress, there is no urgency. What I'd like you to do is understand what we talk about, and at the end of our presentation, you're going to have the opportunity to sit down with one of my team and actually go through the process on a more personal level. So today's webinar is about big picture stuff and what it takes to be successful. And if you like it, what we talk about, we can actually put it together for yourselves in a way that you can actually formulate your own strategy, your own plan. Now, before I get started, what do we do? I suppose we're here to create positive cash flow portfolios of property. So this is the opportunity for you to understand, how do I buy multiple properties that will do things for me that I'm not getting done now? That'll save my tax, that'll dramatically lower my mortgage, and actually build me some wealth for my retirement. Before I get started, I want to give you a little bit about myself and my story. I've been in the property industry for 15 years now. I've been buying property for about 20 years, and for the first 5 years of those 20, I was a property investor. And what I did is I bought and sold property. I bought in the cheap and I sold in the high and did all that sort of stuff. And I realized that what I was doing was making me money, but it actually wasn't building any wealth. There was one property I bought there, originally from Melbourne, one property I bought there in Melbourne. I remember I paid in a suburb called East Bentley, and I paid $117,000 for that property. And at the time, I bought it at auction, which is a big mistake, but I didn't know it any better at the time, and I probably paid a little bit too much. I moved up to Queensland in 2000, so about 3 years later, and I decided I met my wife and fell in love, and you get to meet my family shortly. And I decided to actually sell the property and start a new life up here in Queensland. And I remember I sold the property for $366,000. And I remember I sold the property and I put the money into the bank. And at the time I was working in the media. I was marketing director for the radio stations. I put the money in the bank. I remember looking at my bank account and I had $250,000 cash in my bank account. And I thought, wow. You know, at the time, my income was about $45,000 a year. And I remember thinking to myself, it would take me a lifetime to try and save that sort of money. And here I am, I've done it in 3 years simply by buying a property in East Bentley. And I thought, there's something to do with this property. So over the next 2 or 3 years, I actually went along to a lot of the seminars and a lot of the workshops. I looked at a lot of webinars like this one. And I came across people that were doing it, in my opinion, that doing it well, people that weren't doing it so well. And what I learned from those people and my mentors was that I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know how to actually build wealth in property. I knew how to make money. I knew how to buy property and add value and renovate and do things like that. But I didn't actually know how to actually passively build wealth in the background of my life. So as when I retired at the end of my working life, I could have some money. So I want to tell you, I suppose, who today's webinar is really for. And I'll do that by telling you a story. It's a story of the fox and the hedgehog. And the fox and the hedgehog are in the jungle. I love my stories, so you get used to that. The fox and the hedgehog are in the jungle and having a bit of a chat. And they're talking about, what are they going to do if the lion comes? And the fox says to the hedgehog, hey, Mr. Hedgehog, what are you going to do if the lion comes? And Mr. Hedgehog says, well, look, I'm not really that fast. I'm not really that strong. I haven't really got a lot of tactics, but I've got all these spikes on the back. So if the lion comes, what I'll do is I'll crawl up into a little ball and just put my spikes out and he won't be able to get me. And the fox says, well, that's a smart move. And the hedgehog says to the fox, what are you going to do? And the fox says, well, I tell you what, I am the smartest in the jungle here. I know so many ways to get away from the lion. It's frightening. I wrote the book on how to get away from the lion. And as the fox is describing all these great, unique ways that you can get away from the lion, sure enough, around the corner, the lion comes. The hedgehog sees the lion, squidges into a little ball, puts his spikes out, he's safe. The fox starts flipping through the book, trying to work out how he's going to get away, and ends up getting eaten by the lion. Now, the moral to that story is it's better to know a little and practice a lot than to know a lot and practice very little. We all know a lot of foxes that know everything about everything, but haven't really achieved much. They know about the share market, stocks and bonds and managed funds. They talk about salary sacrificing to super. They talk about this, they talk about that. But really, when you look at what they've achieved, it's not a great deal. Whereas we like to be hedgehogs. If you're a hedgehog, you can come and play with me, right? If you're a hedgehog, ask you a couple of questions. Are you living from paycheck to paycheck? Is that how your life's going at the moment? Are you looking to make a passive income right now? If you're going to invest, do you want to wait for the money or do you want the money right now? I know what I want. I want the money right now. And also, I want to show you how not to end up like the fox, going from one thing to another thing to another thing, doing lots and lots of things, really spinning those wheels and not really getting far at all. So that's what the next, I suppose, 50 minutes is about. I've got a promise for you. Come on board and have a chat to Trident. Go through tonight's webinar. Sit down with one of my team and we will show you a simple step-by-step plan that allows you to, number one, maintain your current lifestyle. I'm not going to sit here and tell you to sacrifice. I'm not going to sit here and say, listen, eat 2-minute noodles for the next 10 years and you'll have some money from when you retire. Because you simply won't be able to do that. It's going to allow you to access those tax dollars that you're currently giving to the government. Right? Because we've all got a choice where that money goes. It can go to the government or it can go to our investments. I know what decision I made a long time ago where I'd rather that money go, and so do my clients. It dramatically reduces the years of your income, of your mortgage, I should say. Now, think about that. We usually take out a 25 or 30-year mortgage. And when you sit down and work out the numbers, to pay that mortgage off over 30 years, if you borrow $300,000, you're normally giving about $600,000 back to the bank. And the bank love it. The bank love that money. They love that interest money. We've got to work out a way to dramatically reduce those years without you sacrificing your lifestyle. I know you can't afford to add more money to the mortgage. If I ask you the question, whose money would you rather put toward your mortgage, your money or somebody else's money? I think I know what the answer would be, somebody else's money. So it's an opportunity to learn how to use somebody else's money to actually pay down your mortgage. And also a plan and a strategy that will actually enable you to make money from day one. Not sit here and struggle for the next 5 or 10 years and finally see some rewards. Let's look at getting cash flow from day one. Now, why do I do it? Well, I told you my story. I'm from Melbourne and I bought and sold 5 properties, and then I started to build my portfolio of properties. I moved up to Queensland. I met my beautiful wife, Cherie, and there's my 2 daughters. That was on Valentine's Day. We were at a restaurant there, and they got roses. That's why I do what I do. I love what I do. I love the industry that I'm in. I love helping my clients. I've put together a team of people that are like-minded. They think like myself. They are investing in our strategies, which you'll learn shortly, and they're successful at it. The company, Trident Properties, our why. Well, our why is really to make a difference, to change the lives of Australians who want more, and to be the parent, teacher, mentor, and coach to any and all Australians who actually desire financial freedom. As I said at the start, our service is complimentary. There is no fee, there is no cost, there is no charge. I am happy to give you all the information and you can do whatever you want with that information. I highly recommend you use us as a resource, answer questions. That's what we do for our clients. So today, as I said, it's about 50 minutes. The next stage of this would be to really sit down with one of my team and actually put together a strategy for yourself personally. As I said, today's big picture, your strategy's got to be very individualized. So if you like what we talk about today, I invite you to sit down with one of my team. My team, they do not sell. There's no selling. There is no talk of property prices and locations. The appointment that you have with my team is about you and what you're trying to achieve and working out a way that if we can actually work together to help you achieve those goals. As I said myself, I've been doing it for 14 years. I've got many friends and family and also clients who are in our program and building wealth. I've actually, my clients and my family and friends have acquired over $30 million in the last 10, 15 years worth of investment properties. Personally, my wife and I have acquired 10 investment properties ourselves. And we've, as I said, I've developed a specialist team that will help you do the exact same thing. All right, so what do we actually do? Well, number one, we educate and support first-time buyers and investors. We do that through debt reduction strategies. As I said, we've got to get rid of that mortgage. Tax minimisation. As I said, there's two places that money can go, the government or your investments. Ask yourself the question, what have you been choosing to do with that money for the last 5 years? And what would you like to do with it for the next 15 or 20? And also, I suppose, in the background, wealth creation. And what does that wealth creation mean to you? Our agenda tonight is about you and property, your goals and objectives, how to successfully invest. And that's a big one. How do you do it successfully? How do you do it correctly? How do the successful people, how do the successful companies who are property companies, how do they actually do it? And I want to share that with you tonight. And as I said, the final step is, if you like what we talk about today or tonight, then it's a personalised strategy that we can put together for you. Now, I want to talk about building wealth in property and why I differentiate the fact of being a property investor and actually building wealth in property. Right? About 10 years ago, I remember I said to my wife one Saturday afternoon up here in Queensland, I said, I'm going to teach the kids how to ride their bikes. I think they were 5 and 3 years old. So I said to the kids, listen kids, we're going to learn how to ride our bikes. I'm going to take the training wheels off and you're actually going to ride on your own. They were so excited, they ran inside to tell mum that daddy was going to teach them how to ride their bikes. And I went in the garage, I took their training wheels off and I got their bikes all set up. And anyway, out the two kids come. Well, I nearly couldn't stop laughing. The wife had put the helmets on, the gloves on, the elbow pads, the knee pads, had them so covered. If she could have wrapped them in bubble wrap, she probably would have. And they came out, and the eldest one, who's I suppose the scaredy cat of the two, she'd come over and looked at this bike that she'd been riding with the training wheels on probably for the last 2 years. She looked at this bike as it was some medieval death trap created to torture her. All she saw was steel and spikes and spokes and things that were going to, tear it from limb to limb. And I said, baby, Daddy's going to guide you through this process. Don't worry. So we got her on the bike, and I was holding the handle, and I was holding the seat, and I'm running up and down the street with her on the bike. Daddy, don't let go, she was saying. And I said, baby, I won't let go. So I said, you can steer. So I let go of the handle, I'm holding the seat. So we're running up and down the street. There's Daddy sweating in the Queensland sun, running up and down the street with his kids. While my daughter and my wife looked on, half excited but half in fear. And I started to let go of the seat. She got her balance a bit, she started to fall, and I grabbed the seat again. And we did it a couple of times, and I said, okay, the next one I'm going to let go, but I reckon you can do it. So we ran along there, and I let it go, and sure enough, she was away. Now, the youngest one, who was looked up to her sister with great envy, saw her older sister doing this. She thought, well, I can do it too. So she jumped on the bike, and she only took half the time because she saw somebody else doing it. So they could easily ride their bikes. So now they're a bit older, and I'll say to the kids, hey, do you want to go for a bike ride? They run straight out to the garage, throw their helmets on, jump on the bikes, and they're away. Now, why is that? Well, the kids have learned a skill that they can't unlearn. If you think about that for a moment, they've learned a skill that you can't unlearn. I often ask people, when was the last time you rode a push bike? Now, the answers can vary from last weekend to 10, 15 years ago. And I say, look, if I offered you $1,000 to ride a push bike and you hadn't ridden one for 10 years, do you think you could do it? And everyone says to me, yes, they could. You haven't forgotten how to ride one. You might be a bit wobbly when you jump on the bike, but you haven't forgotten how to actually ride one. It's a skill that you've learnt that you can't unlearn. And my job and the job of the Trident team is to teach you how to build wealth. And I'm going to ask you 3 simple questions. Number 1, who taught you how to read and write? Now, for most of us, it's our teachers or our parents. Number 2, who taught you right from wrong? Same again, usually our parents or our teachers. And the 3rd question I ask, who taught you how to be a multi-millionaire when you retire? Bit of a harder one to answer, that one, isn't it? If you haven't been taught how to be wealthy in retirement, how do you expect to be wealthy in retirement? You need to learn this skill. And Trident Properties and myself and my team, we are happy to educate you in that skill on how to buy the right properties and structure finance and accumulate a portfolio of property without it costing you any money and without it affecting your lifestyle. All right, now, the first step for everyone, if you sit down with myself or one of my team, I don't care whether you're a very, very experienced investor or you're an absolute first timer. Every single person that sits down with us has the exact same starting point. The exact same starting point that we all need to I suppose, start with and follow to actually build success. And I'll go as far as to say this simple thing at the very start is what most of the property investors, not wealth builders, most of the property investors actually don't do. Right? The simple thing that we need to do, the starting point for all of us is setting goals. What are our goals? Let's be aware of what we're actually trying to do. If you sit down with me, one of the first questions I'm going to ask you is, what do you want? What can I help you with? Now, the answer I normally get is, oh, Gary, I want to be rich. Well, what does that mean? I know what my rich is. What's your rich? Oh, Gary, I want to be comfortable. Well, then have a lie down over there. You can be comfortable. I'll give you a pillow and a doona. Have a lie down. When we talk about goals, we need to set the destination. We need to give ourselves an end destination and then work a pathway or a strategy or a plan to get to that destination. If we don't have a destination, it's like getting into a cab and you say to the cab driver says to you, I should say, where to? And you say, oh, just drive. It's like going to a restaurant, opening up the menu and the waiter comes up and says, sir, what would you like to eat tonight? And you say, oh, just give me some food. Give someone a destination or a direction or what you require, and they will help you get it. And that's what Trident Property does. Now, when we talk about goals, we break those goals down into 3 specific areas. Number 1 is time frame. Okay? So what I'd like you to do if you are taking some notes or you've got a pen and paper there is I want you to write down 2 numbers. I want you to write down your age today. So write your age down. And I want you to write down how old you want to be when you retire. Now, no one write the same number down twice because I know we all want to do that, and I don't know the lotto numbers, unfortunately. When do you realistically think that you're going to retire? I think the government are talking about pushing the retirement age out to now 70 years old. So any time before that would be a bonus, I think. So write those 2 numbers down. Then write beside those 2 numbers a big number of the distance between there. That's your time frame. And I want you to circle that number. Could be 10, could be 15, could be 20 years. So that's how long we've got to work with. Now I want you to write down another number. These are your numbers. I want you to think about if you could retire today, what sort of a passive annual income would you like to have to do the things you want to do? Now, for a lot of people, that's a hard one to answer. So before we get onto that one, let's go to number 3. What have you got a heart for? What are you passionate about? What drives you? What makes you tick? What is it? So let's go on a bit of a journey together. And let's assume that you win lotto, you've won $20 million. Money's not an issue anymore. I want you to write down the first 3 things you would do with the money. What are the very first 3 things you would do with the money? Think about that for a moment. You know, where would you live? If money was an object, would you stay where you are? Would you move somewhere else? Where would you live? What sort of car would you drive? Where would you go? Now, would you travel? And if you would travel, what's the very first place you'd love to go to? And how would you like to get there? I often ask my clients, when you imagine your travel and lifestyle in retirement, when you imagine yourself walking on the plane, when you go through that door and the stewardess is there looking at your boarding pass, do you want to go to the right of the plane, down the back end, or do you want to go to the left up the front end? I know where I want to go. I've travelled up there a couple of times. It's very, very nice, believe me. So think about what it is you want. Another one to think about, if you had that sort of money, who would you help? Who would you give back to? Maybe it's your kid's school. Maybe it's your family. Maybe you want to keep it all for yourself. That's okay. That's fine. Maybe it's your immediate family. Maybe it's your church or your community. Maybe you want to give back. That sort of money creates opportunity. So very first step for all of us is to sit down and identify our goals. what our time frame is. So how many years have we got to build our wealth? What's our, because this will determine our plan. So how many years have we got? What are our numbers? What sort of a passive income do we need to acquire to live that lifestyle? And do that in today's dollars. Don't worry about 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Do it in today's dollars. And then most importantly, what are you passionate about? What have you got a heart for? What's going to drive you? All right. So I spend a bit of time on goals with my clients, and when we sit down with you, we actually do a full-on goal session with you, because as I said, it's probably the greatest change I made in my life when I learnt from my mentors. One of the things I do, my wife and my 2 kids, every year, January 1 and July 1, we sit down, we've got a goal book, it's a big old leather-bound book, and we write our goals down. My wife and I focus on health, wealth, and relationships. In those 3 areas, what do we want to achieve in the next 3 months? What are our short-term goals? What are our long-term goals that we want to achieve in health, wealth, and relationships? My kids, they look at health, wealth, and relationships, not so much wealth. They've got to earn their pocket money, of course. But relationships are pretty with their friends. They also, one of them does ballet, one of them does gymnastics. They want to achieve certain goals in theirs. And we write them down every January 1 and July 1. And the kids are into that habit. And it's a habit of success, setting goals. Now, why are goals so important? Well, according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics in 2015, this is how Australians retire. Now, as you can see, there's 5 groups there. The biggest group, most Australians who are retired now, nearly 84 out of 100, 84% of them, actually retire on an income of below $21,000. Now, think about that. 84% of retirees that are retired today are actually on an income of $21,000. Now think back to our goal session, if you were writing it down, how much money did you write down as your passive income? Was it $21,000? Because if it was, do nothing. The pension will look after you, if it's still available when you retire, that is, right? But if it's more than that, we've got to put a plan in place for achievement. Let's go to the other side of the other end of the spectrum. $52,000 or more, 1 in 100, 1.3 in 100. So 1 out of 100 are actually retiring with some form of wealth, $52,000 or greater, $1,000 a week passive income in their retirement today. Now, if I ask you, of those 5 groups, if you could choose which group would you like to be in, I would assume that all of you would say the 1.3% at $52,000 a year. But unfortunately, statistics clearly show us that only 1 out of 100 will actually get there. So you've got the choice today to either make that decision to be that one or to be in the other 99 or 98.7 that actually rely on some form of a pension. Very sobering facts. To put it into perspective for you, if you were to retire in the years that you wrote down on your page, to be in that top group, to be in that $52,000 or more group, you would have to have a couple of things. You'd have to have your home paid off, got to get rid of that mortgage, and you'd have to have about $1 million in super. If you got a 5% return, that would give you a passive income of around $50,000 a year. So home paid off and $1 million in super. To be in the middle group, the 4.1%, you'd need the home paid off and around $800,000 in super. Now quickly think about how long you've been working for and have a think about how much super do you have. Can be a scary numbers when you think about it. Most people have between $10,000 and $20,000 a year they've put away. If you've been working for about 15 years, you've got about $150,000 to $200,000 in super. Now, if you want to retire in 10 years, it doesn't leave you a lot of time. So now that we've worked out our goals and the reason why goals are so important, we've sat down with one of the Trident team, we've expressed where we are today, what we want to achieve, and we've put together a plan and a strategy for you to move forward, okay? Now we're going to look at how do we move forward. Let's talk about specifics on how do we actually move forward. How do we actually be a wealth builder and not a property investor? It's now time for some action. So when we invest in property, there's a lot of stories about location. You make the money in the buying. You've got to buy in the bottom and sell in the high. For me, a lot of that's not irrelevant, but not that important. When I invest in property, and I invest every year, I don't care what the market's doing. I invest every year if I can. I look at three things, the three fundamentals. I often say that Moses had 10 commandments. I've only got 3. You've only got to follow 3 commandments to be successful at this. And those 3 commandments are income, growth, and duplication. When you buy property, or if you tell me you have a property, the questions I will ask you is, does it give you a passive income? Do you make money from this asset every week? Has or will the asset grow in value? And tell me why you think so. And if it gives you money every week and it grows in value, let's get another one. And let's get another one and another one and another one and build our portfolio of properties. So let me break this down for you, okay? Let's look at a basic property. Here is my block of land, yeah? And here is my house that sits on the land, yeah? Now, when you buy these things, the bank will value these things individually. They'll give you a land valuation and a valuation of what they call the improvements. That'll be the house, the fencing, a swimming pool or a tennis court or whatever you've got there, okay? So these 2 things have a value. When we talk about income, which one of these 2 things actually gives you the income? It's the house. The land, a vacant block of land, does not give me weekly income. The house is what gives me the weekly income. Now, let's talk about the house for a moment. The income that we get from a house, there's 2 streams. The first stream is the rent that you get, and the second stream is the tax benefits that you get. Now, if you understand tax, and maybe some of you do and some of you don't, there's a thing called a tax variation form, and that tax variation form enables you to get your tax back every payday. So not waiting till the end of the year for your tax check. I actually get my tax check back every payday. In fact, I pretty much don't pay tax. I actually get it back every payday. I do a tax variation form, which tells the government, don't charge Gary any tax. He's going to claim it all back in the end of the year, so he doesn't want to give you an interest-free loan for the next 12 months, because believe me, they won't give you an interest-free loan if you don't pay them, so I'd rather have my money. At the end of the day, it's my money, so I want it back now. So we've got to make sure that the rent and the tax money is greater than all of our expenses. I don't really care by how much, as long as it's greater. The more the better, obviously. As long as it's $10, $15, $20 greater than all our expenses, we now have a positive cash flow property. Okay? A good rule of thumb, if you're looking at property at the moment, when you're buying a property, try and buy brand new because you get the greatest tax deductions. But also when you're looking at rent, try and get $1 per thousand. So if you're spending $550,000 on an investment property, I want to get $550 a week in rent. If I'm spending $415,000 on a property, I want to get $415,000 a week in rent. So try and get $1 per thousand. You should be pretty close to positive cash flow in today's market. Now, if our house gives us an income, the land is what grows in value. Land grows in value. Land is what will grow in value. To make it easier, if I do nothing to this house for the next 50 years and I leave it just to run it, rack and ruin, is it worth more or less in 50 years than it is today? Obviously, it's worth less. It's a broken down, 50-year-old shack. Right? If I do nothing to the land, in fact, if I start digging holes in the land, if I throw petrol on it and set it on fire, if I dump rubbish on it, is it worth more or less in 50 years than it is today? It's worth a hell of a lot more in 50 years. Because land has what they call intrinsic value. It's the value of something that can't be diminished or taken away. So land is what grows in value. Now, what makes the land grow in value is population, pretty much supply and demand. If everybody wants the land, the price goes up. If nobody wants the land, the price goes down. A great example of that is the mining towns. When they open up a new mine in a mining town, what happens to property prices? They skyrocket. Why? Because everybody is going there to work. They need somewhere to live. And when they close that mine down, what happens to property prices? They plummet. The rents plummet. The property prices plummet. So rule number one, if we're going to go and building wealth in property, we don't buy in mining towns, guys. We're not going to buy and get in and get out, get in and get out. We're there for the long haul. So the house gives us the income through rent and tax. So we're going to make sure that rent and tax is greater than all our expenses. And we've got to find land where our our demand for that land through population movement shows the growth. Things like government spending, if you see areas that are getting a new rail system, new schooling, new roads put in, that's a really positive thing for that area. It'll make people want to live there. What's better than government spending is private money. People like Woolworths and Coles, people like Westfield, if they pick an area to build a Westfield in, right, that area around the Westfield will grow in value, right? Because the demand will be to live close to Westfield because it's handy and convenient for people. So if we can get positive cash flow property that are growing in value, duplication becomes a byproduct of what we do. You've bought a property, you've made $80,000 or $100,000, it's giving you $50 a week. If I said to you, would you like another one of those? You'd probably say to me, Gary, can I get 10? Why wouldn't you? But if you bought a property that was costing you $100 a week and you'd had it for 4 years and it hadn't grown in value, how do you duplicate and build on from that process? It doesn't work. It doesn't work. So let me break it down for you on here. Income comes from the house or box. 2 streams of income from the box, which is the rent and the tax, as I said. And we must maximise the income through rent and tax benefits. The growth comes from the land. What drives growth is supply and demand and affordability, very important. Supply and demand is based on population and population movements. Affordability is household disposable income. So we've got to analyse a specific suburb. Do the people that live in that suburb earn enough income to actually pay you the rent that you require? It's okay to ask the agents, what do you think I'll get for rent on this property and all that sort of stuff. But if I can see that I need to get $600 a week rent and the average family in that suburb is only bringing in $1,000 a week per household, they're not going to be able to afford 60% of their income on rent. They're simply not going to be able to do it. No matter what the agent says, they're just not going to be able to do it. So it's very important that we get that right. And we must buy property from 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock. Now, that doesn't mean that we sign contracts in the afternoons, early evenings. It actually talks about, I suppose, the property clock. And the property clock looks a little bit something like this. As you can see, it's a clock. It's a circle. At the top is the boom. We come off the boom into a little bit of pain and correction. Then we see opportunity. And then we see value growing. And then we see, as the value starts to grow, we get into an area of danger. And then we have a peak in our boom, and then it comes off the boil again. So I'm recording this in September of 2017. And I noticed some, I suppose, dramatic changes and differences in the market at the moment. For me, the Sydney and Melbourne market have been very, very strong in the last 5 or 6 years. Not so much Adelaide, Perth and Brisbane. So if we look at the property clock now and we ask, okay, where do we think the Sydney market is? I think it's around that 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock. I think median house price is over $1 million now in Sydney for the average house in Sydney. And I think that's reached a bit of a peak. I think Melbourne's still got a little bit, it's a little bit lagging behind Sydney, but not much. I think it's got a little bit to go, but it won't be long before they're at that 12, 1 o'clock period and starting to come off the boil. Now, when we talk about coming off the boil and pain, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a 30 or 40% drop in value, because that doesn't happen. On the top end of the market, the 5, 10, 15, $20 million properties, absolutely. That can come off dramatically. But when we talk about the average property prices, the median house price in the city, doesn't really change that much. Where does Brisbane sit? I like Brisbane at the moment. Sits around 6 or 7 o'clock. It's on its way up now. It's starting to things, and I'll explain why in a moment. Adelaide's around 5 to 6 o'clock. And Perth, unfortunately, Perth's still got a bit of pain and correction. They have been dramatically hit by the mining boom, the downturn of the mining boom. There's a lot of vacancies in Perth. I don't like the Perth market at the moment. I wouldn't be putting any of my clients in there at the moment, or myself. But the Perth market will have its day in the sun, but it won't go until the Brisbane market runs. And I'll talk about why patterns are so important. So if we can understand the property clock and buy between 4 o'clock and 8 o'clock, down the bottom there. And then we have duplication. So we've got growth is giving us our equity, income's within our budget and making us profit. And by the way, when we buy a positive cash flow property, where does that positive cash flow go? Now, once again, you've got a lot of choices with that money. You can add it to your lifestyle. But for me and my clients, let's put that positive cash flow, $50, $60, $70 off our mortgage. Now think about that. Jump on one of those calculators that you can get from the bank's websites. Put in your mortgage and put in 30 years and say, what if I make an extra payment of $70 a week? How will that affect my 30-year mortgage? And you'll be amazed at how many years will come off. Let's buy 2 properties. What if I put $140 in? 3, let's put in $200, $210 a week off my mortgage. All of a sudden, you'll start to see your mortgage going from 30 years down to 15, 12, even 10 years. And most of our clients have strategies and plans in place to get rid of their mortgage within single-digit numbers of years. If you can get that right, duplication becomes just like riding that bike, as I said earlier, just like riding that bike. All right. Now, Gary, that sounds all very interesting, and you talk well. It sounds like positive, but I think the world's different. I don't think the market's going to react the same as it has done in the past. I think we've got a debt crisis. We've got an unstable government. We've got Donald Trump over there doing Lord knows what. We've got North Korea setting off whatever, and we've got all this happening around the place. I don't think the world's the same. Well, I can't predict the future. My crystal ball is as good as yours. I've got some pretty good research in my research department that gives me information. So I have a fairly good knowledge of what I think is going to happen. But once again, it's just an estimate. And I base a lot of those forecasts on history, on what's happened. And as you can see by the slide in front of you now, this is the median house price for every capital city since 1966. So I started in 1966 because on February the 14th, we went from pounds and shillings to dollars and cents. So it gets a bit confusing before that. But if we look at the Sydney market, in 1966, the average house price was $15,000. Wouldn't it be great to go back there and capitalise on that opportunity? 10 years later, it more than doubled. 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 And believe it or not, 10 years after that, it's more than doubled again. Now, Melbourne's done a similar thing, although it didn't double between 86 and 96, but then it caught up and nearly tripled in 2006. Now, interestingly, for the first time in 50 years, the Brisbane, Adelaide and Perth market haven't doubled from 2006 to 2006 in that 10-year period. Why is that? Well, we haven't been through a cycle yet. Unfortunately, from 2006 to 2016, our cycle was interrupted by a thing called the global financial crisis, or what you and I might refer to as the GFC, the greatest global financial disaster in our lifetime. Hit. Share market plummeted. Your superannuation got absolutely butchered. But what did property prices do in the last 10 years? Well, they've gone pretty good, even in Adelaide, Perth and Brisbane. Right? Obviously, the Sydney and Melbourne market have gone through the roof. They've more than doubled. Now, when we look at a property cycle and we analyse the cycle itself, they normally last between 8 and 12 years. And we usually have one every decade. And if you go back to the last 5 decades, you can clearly see 5 property booms. And every property boom that we've had, the Melbourne and Sydney market start the boom. When they get too expensive after 3, 4, 5 years, the next market to kick in and catch up is the Brisbane market. When the Brisbane market gets too expensive, normally the next market that'll kick in will be either Perth or Adelaide. Right? And that's the cycle. By the time Perth and Adelaide catch up to where Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane are, Melbourne and Sydney have been quiet for 5 or 6 years, then they start their run again. And that's the cycle that we go through. An interesting one to look at, if you look at the difference between the Melbourne and the Brisbane market, if we look at the difference between Melbourne and Brisbane in 1966, it was some $3,300. 10 years later, it was only $7,000. 10 years later, it was roughly about $19,000, $18,000, $19,000. 10 years after that, in 1996, it was $12,000. 2006, difference between Brisbane and Melbourne was $5,000. In 2016, the difference between Brisbane and Melbourne was over $300,000. Now, to me, those numbers are out of whack. One of two things needs to happen. Either Melbourne will come off the boil $200,000, $300,000, or Brisbane will rise $200,000 or $300,000. And I think to myself, okay, which one of those two scenarios is more likely? When was the last time, if you look at the graph, that the Melbourne market dropped 30, 40, 50%? Well, never. When was the last time that the Brisbane market caught up to where the Melbourne market was? Well, that's happened every single time. So for me, I like the Brisbane market at the moment. But once again, depending on your personal circumstance, your affordability and your goals will depend on the strategy and the plan that we actually give you individually. All right. I want to spend a little bit of time on the best property investment company in the world, bar none today. The greatest property investment company in the world today. This company has more land than the Catholic Church. Now that's successful. You know them as McDonald's, but their actual name is actually McDonald's Realty. They are the world's best investment property company. And what do? They do three things. They follow income, growth, and duplication. They buy a block of dirt with plenty of demand. They put a box on that dirt, which is the store, that gives them the income. And when that dirt grows in value, what does McDonald's do? Well, they duplicate the process. Are they any good at this? You bet they are. McDonald's has over 33,000 stores worldwide. They open up 3 stores a day, 1,000 a year. 3 a day. How do they do it? Income, growth, and duplication. McDonald's buys the land and they put a store in it. There's our store there. Now these guys, these loyal employees of McDonald's with their hand on their heart, they sell the food that drives the income. Now, let's just have a closer look at McDonald's. McDonald's, we would all agree, is a pretty successful company. I don't think we'd all agree that they make great food though. I know most of us have eaten the food and most of us will eat it again, but we know it's not probably the best and most healthiest food for us. Right? Now, why is McDonald's so good? If they don't make the best food and they don't make the best product, I suppose, why are they so successful? McDonald's is so successful is because they focus on their target market. Now, McDonald's has a target market, and I'm going to tell you who that is. McDonald's target market is everybody. They want everyone to eat McDonald's. When? When do they want us to eat McDonald's? They want us to eat McDonald's when we want fast, cheap, convenient food. So if you're looking for fast, cheap, convenient food, they want you to think of McDonald's. Not anybody else, just McDonald's. So their target market is people that want fast, cheap, convenient food. And that's all they do. They focus on delivering product to their target market who all they want is fast, cheap, convenient food. If they want healthy, they will go somewhere else. If they want the dining experience with their partner on their anniversary dinner or something, they will go somewhere else. McDonald's doesn't want that business. If you want fast, cheap, convenient food, come and see us at McDonald's. What's McDonald's trading hours? Most of the stores are 24 hours a day. Is that convenient enough for you? Convenient enough for you? They made a change to their business. Around 30 years ago, they made a change to their business. Now, that change that they made 30 years ago currently delivers roughly 70 to 80% of all of their income. So a fairly significant change. And that change was based on their target market. What do you think that change was? Their target market wants fast, cheap, convenient food. So the change they made was drive-through. We will make it faster and we will make it more convenient for you because we know it's difficult for you to park your car and walk those 12 paces to our counter. You're just going to wind the window down and we'll just shovel that stuff in. There's a way that they could chew it up for you. They probably work that out as well. Make it even easier. Right? McDonald's focuses on their target market. And as wealth builders in property, we've got to do the same. So our loyal couple with our hand on our heart, they make money selling the junk food. I shouldn't say that. Selling the product to the people that want fast, cheap, convenient food. Any shortfall or any cost can be claimed back through a tax deduction back to McDonald's. And McDonald's have a positive cash flow asset that's growing in value. What do they do really, really well? They duplicate that process over and over and over again. All right. How do we work on that? what do we do? Well, Trident Properties. Trident Properties. We have a target market. We source positive cash flow properties for our clients. But once again, we are building a business, just like McDonald's. We are building a business to fund our retirement. In fact, this business that you're building between now and your retirement is going to give you more money in your retirement than your job ever did. Right? So it's pretty important that we focus on our business. So as wealth builders in property, who do you think our target market for our business is? Right? Now, when I ask that question, I get a lot of different answers. Who are we buying property for? Are we buying it for ourselves? Well, no, not really. We're buying it for first home buyers, or we're buying it to sell to someone. No, we're not. Our target market is families that can't afford to buy. They're our target market. We need to buy product or properties for families that can't afford to buy. Now let's analyse those families for a moment. Do those families earn big incomes or medium to low incomes? Medium to low. Where do medium to low income families live? Do they live within 5-10K of the capital city? Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Adelaide, Perth? Or do they live maybe 30, 40, 50K from a capital city? Now, if that's where all of your target market live, where do you think you should be investing in property? So the one-bedroom high-rise apartment in South Bank, and there's usually a South Bank in every capital city, your target market doesn't want to live there. That's not that's the wrong target market. You're not listening to your target market. Oh, but Gary, I got it really cheap. Well, you should see the views. I don't care about the views. I'm never going to live there. Right? Your target market wants specific things. They want affordable rent. They want it to be close to schools, shops, jobs, transport, infrastructure. They need all that sort of stuff. So your target market is families that can't afford to buy property. Now, is there more of these families that can't afford to buy property in country towns, mining towns, or capital cities? Capital cities. Now, these families, they need a job to pay their income. Is there more jobs for these families in country towns, mining towns, or capital cities? Capital cities. So we need to buy brand new houses for the greater tax deduction at $1 per thousand in rent, as I mentioned earlier, that are on the 30, 40, 50K border of the thing where all our target market live, that is close to schools, shops, jobs, transport, and infrastructure. Our rent and our tax needs to cover our expenses. And if we can do that and get growth in our asset, we can duplicate this process over and over and over again. All right, so how does it work? So let's say we look at our first property. We buy a property today for $500,000 and we borrow all the money. And there's a strategy that we put in place that allows you to borrow all the money, not just 90 or 80%. We get all the money borrowed from the bank. I don't want you to put your hard-earned cash or your savings into the property. And then we wait 2 years. We get our positive cash flow and we get our growth. And in 2 years, we then buy our second property, giving us a bit of equity. Obviously, the prices have gone up in the 2 years. We wait 2 more years and we buy our third property. We wait 2 years again, we buy our fourth. And we wait 2 years again and we buy our fifth property. So over the next 8 years, we should have assets valued at just under $4 million and a debt of just under $3.2 million, with an equity position of about $785,000. Now, let's assume that we wait in our retirement's 15 years. Let's assume that we do nothing for the next 7 years to year 15. Our asset will grow in value, and we work on 6% capital growth per annum. If your asset grows 6% growth per annum, and I use 6% because the average growth for the last 50 years has been 9.2%. Average growth for the last 20 years with the GFC has been 8.2%. So if we're on the average properties and getting 6% growth, they'll be worth $5.99 million. What will our debt be? Well, if we focused all our extra income off our home loan and we've been paying interest only on the debt, it'll still be 3.199, won't it? But we'll have an asset base valued at 2.7 plus million. Now, a couple of questions. How much of your savings have I asked you to put toward this portfolio? None. How much of your lifestyle money have I asked you to put toward holding these properties for the next 15 years? None. We're going to use somebody else's time, in the words of Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, we're going to use somebody else's time and somebody else's money to make us wealthy. This is building wealth in property. We are not foxes, we are not property investors, we are hedgehogs. Hedgehogs who do one thing and do it really, really well. Now, to do this, finance is critical. I'm going to touch base on finance with you, but there is a lot to go through on finance, and this is one of the things that we'll actually sit down with you when we come out and see you and go through this for you. Firstly, we don't use the bank that has your home to buy your investments. This is called cross-collateralization. Right? It means that your home now secures your investment property. How many people out there in webinar land want to put their home up at risk against their investment properties? I would say none of you. I promise you the banks want you to do that. I'm telling you, don't do that. Don't listen to the banks. You must keep them independent. Keep your home safe. Keep it out of the picture. How do we do that? We use different lenders. So my home bank might be with Bank A, and all my investments will be with Bank B, C, D, E. I'll never be with Bank A. I don't want Bank A or my home to secure any of my investment properties. Very important. We have offset accounts on our bad debt. Our bad debt is our non-tax deductible debt. This is the debt that you are responsible to pay off. No one's helping you pay off with that. Things like bad debt is credit card debt, car loans. These are assets that are going down in value while you're paying the debt off. Okay, bad debt is your home debt. Your assets going up, but you're the one, there's no tax benefits. You're the one who's going to pay that mortgage off. Good debt is debt that somebody else is paying for you, and it's also giving you an income. That's investment debt. And and to do that, you need an investment mortgage specialist. Now we use different people in each state for our things, but these people are experienced in investment lending. Investment lending is very, very, very different, especially today. It's very different than owner-occupied lending. There's a lot more hoops to jump through and boxes to tick and I's to dot and T's to cross to get an investment loan through. And if you don't understand that process and you're using a really lovely person who's got every good intention for you, but they specialize in owner-occupied debt, you're not going to get the result that you need. If you get it wrong, you'll have reduced rental yields. That's buying less than $1 per thousand. Reduced lifestyle, which means that now what you could have spent on your family or your kids is now being put toward these investment properties. Reduced cash flow. Finance and personal stress. It's not a pretty picture to be in. Unable to duplicate. Well, I'd love to buy another one, Gary, but I can't afford to. How many times have I heard that? Oh, we've got two really good ones, but I simply can't afford to buy another one because they're negatively geared. They're costing you money. And it can cause sleepless nights, and I've even seen marriage break up over it. So it's not something that I recommend anyone don't even go down that path. If there's an opportunity to buy a positive cash flow property in the capital cities, just look at those. They're safer, they're more secure. The banks like them better. It's just going to be easier for you. What happens when you work with Trident and you get it right? Maximum rental yields. We have maximum tax deductions, buying brand new. Strong cash flow, positive, strong cash flow. The tenant now starts to pay off my mortgage. The tax man helps me and pays off my mortgage. And I've got that ability to do this over and over and over again. Guys, it's a simple strategy. Once it's in place, it's simply a step-by-step program that Trident Property work with you. They go through the process with you, and they hold your hand throughout the process. Right? If you just want the information, guys, that's fine too. You want to do it yourself, have a crack. We can fix your mess up when you get it wrong down the track, as long as you've got the years to recover. Because that's the scariest thing. Most people that I talk to, they aren't in their 20s, they're in their 40s, even their early 50s, and they want to retire in 10, 15 years. And unfortunately, you don't have the opportunity, to make that mistake, to right or wrong. You don't have that opportunity. You don't have the years left, guys. That's the end of my presentation, my webinar, guys. I hope you've enjoyed it. I want to give you the opportunity to sit down with one of my team. As you can see, we don't sell. We're not selling. If we can help you, that's great. If you don't want our help, if you just want a plan and understanding, I'm fine with that as well. I'd love you all to sit down with one of my team in your capital city and spend 90 minutes. They'll come to your home. They don't sell anything, so you don't have to worry about that. They drink the crappy coffee. You don't have to make them anything nice if you don't want to. They always yell at me for that because they all like the nice stuff. But I say, no, give them the Nescafe or whatever. They'll sit down with you. That appointment is about you. It's about you, what you've got to work with, what you want, what you're trying to achieve. And is there a way that Trident can help you get that? Right? There is no obligation. We come to your home. All we ask is that both of you are there because we're going to do a goal session. So if you've got you and your partner, if you don't have a partner, that's fine. But if you have a partner, make sure your partner's there. Give them 90 minutes. So put the kids to bed, turn off My Kitchen Rules or The Block or whatever you've been watching. Sit down with the guys for 90 minutes. Let them go through the process with you. There is no obligation. If that's all you do and you get an understanding and an idea of things to do, hey, I wish you luck on your journey. I'd love to sit down with you myself and help you all. I physically aren't able to scour the country, but I promise you my team has been trained by myself, and anything that goes forward, I'd love to be involved and I'd love to be part of your journey as well. Thank you so much for listening to me. I hope you've enjoyed today's webinar, and I look forward to welcoming you to the Trident family.